The spiritual awakening journey is one of the most profound, transformative, and excruciatingly challenging experiences a human being can undergo in this lifetime. Among the myriad of spiritual connections, the twin flame dynamic emerges as a towering beacon of radical metamorphosis, a fierce catalytic force that propels an individual into the deepest, most hidden corridors of their own being. Yet, a pervasive misunderstanding clogs the collective consciousness regarding this bond. The romanticized illusion, fueled by mainstream media and fairy tales, that a twin flame relationship is merely a heightened Hollywood romance where two star-crossed lovers overcome a few terrestrial obstacles to live happily ever after life. In absolute reality, the core of the twin flame journey has almost nothing to do with the external person and everything to do with the self. It is a rigorous, non-negotiable invitation to turn entirely inward, a process known as inner work. This practice is the methodical dismantling, healing, and reintegration of one's own fragmented psyche, designed to alchemize human suffering into divine wholeness. To comprehend why inner work is the solitary key to navigating this path, one must first dissect the nature of the twin bond through the lens of energetic and spiritual mechanics. Metaphysically, twin flames are conceptualized as a single energetic consciousness split into two polar opposites, the divine masculine and the divine feminine, incarnated into two distinct physical vessels. When these two opposing yet complementary frequencies collide in the physical realm, the energetic activation is instantaneous and cataclysmic. It is akin to introducing a massive high-voltage current into an archaic, dusty, and neglected electrical grid. This celestial current does not illuminate the relationship. Rather, it floods the individual systems, exposing every dark corner, unhealed trauma, core fear, false belief, and repressed shadow that has been buried beneath layers of societal and familial conditioning over decades or even lifetimes. The initial encounter, often referred to as the bubble phase, is characterized by an intoxicating euphoria, a profound spiritual recognition, and an undeniable sensation of coming home. However, once this spiritual honeymoon wanes, the law of cosmic mirroring takes center stage. Your twin flame is not just a romantic partner. They are the most immaculate, uncompromising, and brutal mirror you will ever encounter. They do not merely reflect your beauty, your talents, or your light. They reflect with absolute precision your deepest, most agonizing unhealed wounds. If you harbor a deep-seated fear of abandonment rooted in childhood, they will subconsciously act in ways that leave you feeling utterly deserted. If you suffer from a distorted sense of low self-worth, their behavior will trigger your deepest insecurities. This immense pain is rarely inflicted out of malice. It is a sacred, orchestrated setup by the universe to force you to look at what needs to be healed within yourself. This intense energetic friction inevitably triggers the classic agonizing phase known as the runner and chaser dynamic. Typically, one counterpart, often the one dominant in divine masculine energy, becomes completely overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of the emotional and energetic onslaught, causing them to run, withdraw, or enter a state of prolonged silence. The other counterpart, usually dominant in divine feminine energy, is thrust into a state of existential panic, frantically chasing, grasping, and attempting to fix, manipulate, or force the connection back into the physical dimension. This is the ultimate crucible. If the chasing counterpart continues to project their energy outward, obsessing over the runner's actions, decoding their social media, or begging for external validation, they lock themselves into an infinite loop of suffering known as the dark night of the soul. The only escape hatch and the true teleological purpose of this separation is a total, radical shift of awareness from the outside world to the inside. This is the exact coordinates where authentic inner work begins. Inner work on the twin flame path is not a superficial endeavor that can be checked off a list with a few minutes of daily meditation, some crystals, or positive affirmations pasted on a mirror. It is a grueling, psychic surgery that demands immense courage to stand naked before one's own darkness. The foundational pillar of this work is inner child healing. Almost every irrational reaction, emotional trigger, bouts of jealousy, control mechanism, or existential terror experienced within the twin dynamic can be traced back to early childhood developmental trauma. We carry within our cellular memory the wounds of emotional neglect, conditional love, parental rejection, and societal shaming. When your twin triggers these wounds, the unawakened ego blames the twin. The awakening soul, however, asks, why does this feel so familiar? When did I first feel this absolute terror of being unwanted or unseen? Healing the inner child requires the conscious adult self to step backwards in time into those moments of historical trauma, not to wallow in a victim mentality, but to act as the ultimate divine parent that the child never had. It involves sitting with the terrified, weeping aspect of the psyche, allowing it to voice its suppressed grief, and assuring it that it is entirely safe, deeply loved, and fiercely protected by the current mature self. As the inner child is systematically reparented and validated from within, the desperate urge to latch onto the twin flame for external safety, completion, and validation naturally dissolves. You begin to understand that no human being, not even your divine counterpart, bears the responsibility of filling the void within your chest. That is an inside job. Simultaneously, the seeker must engage in shadow work. The shadow, as defined by Carl Jung, consists of all the parts of our personality, desires, and emotions that we have repressed, denied, or deemed unacceptable due to societal, religious, or familial conditioning. In the magnetic crucible of the twin flame connection, these hidden aspects are dragged ruthlessly into the light. You may be shocked to discover within yourself an intense capacity for obsessive control, toxic jealousy, vindictive anger, or a profound manipulative streak when your counterpart pulls away or associates with others. True shadow work does not aim to eradicate these dark facets of the self. Rather, it aims to bring them into the warm light of non-judgmental awareness and radical acceptance. When you acknowledge that you contain both the saint and the sinner, that feeling rage, vulnerability, or weakness is an integral part of the human experience, you begin to integrate the fragmented splinters of your psyche. Your twin reflects your shadow, not to condemn you, but to show you what you have excluded from your own self-love. It is only when you can fully extend unconditional love to your own ugliest, most deformed shadow aspects that you can truly comprehend what unconditional love means on a universal scale. Another critical frontier of inner work in this context is the deconstruction of codependency and the establishment of sacred boundaries. Many individuals on this path fall into a dangerous trap disguised as spiritual martyrdom. They endure emotional abuse, chronic ghosting, disrespect, or narcissistic manipulation under the justification that they are my twin flame, so I must unconditionally accept and wait for them. This is a severe, toxic distortion of spiritual truth. The twin flame connection is holy, and divinity never demands the annihilation of your self-respect or the toleration of emotional degradation. Inner work forces you to identify your codependent patterns, the ways in which you hook your happiness, stability, and sense of identity onto the words, actions, or mood swings of your counterpart. You must learn the art of the sacred no. If your twin is unhealed, operating from their ego shadow and projecting toxic energy into your space, pulling away and enforcing a strict boundary is not an act of abandonment. It is the ultimate act of self-love. Establishing boundaries is your declaration to the universe and to your counterpart that you honor your own divinity and refuse to accept anything less than reciprocal respect. Paradoxically, when you raise your energetic frequency and claim your worth through boundaries, the shared energetic cord transmits this shift to your twin, often forcing them to confront their own behavior in the vacuum of your absence. The absolute epicenter of all inner work on this journey is the rebalancing of the divine masculine, DM, and divine feminine, DF, energies within your own energetic anatomy, entirely independent of your physical gender. Every human soul is a composite of these two primal cosmic currents. The divine feminine energy represents intuition, receiving, creativity, emotional depth, fluid movement, and nurturing. When wounded, the DF energy degenerates into control, anxiety, desperation, codependency, emotional manipulation, and a martyr complex. The wounded DF is the quintessential chaser, exhausting themselves trying to manage the external connection. Inner work for the DF involves shifting from a state of anxious control to a state of absolute trust, surrender, and open receptivity. The DF must learn to stand anchored in their own sovereignty, cultivating their independent passions, creative missions, and intuitive gifts, rather than turning their twin flame into the sole orbit of their existence. Conversely, the divine masculine energy represents action, structure, logic, protection, analytical clarity, and willpower. When wounded, the DM energy manifests as emotional avoidance, running, heavy intellectualization to deny spiritual truths, hiding behind workaholism, shallow relationships, or various addictions to numb the terrifying emotional depth of the connection. Inner work for the DM aspect, whether within yourself or as a general archetype, demands the lowering of the rational ego, allowing the heart walls to crumble, permitting oneself to feel profound vulnerability, and taking radical responsibility for one's actions, instead of retreating into defensive stoicism. The ultimate objective of the twin flame dynamic is never the physical union of two bodies. It is the inner union, eros gamos, of the masculine and feminine within the individual psyche. When you heal your core wounds, you automatically balance these internal currents. You possess both the tender empathy of the feminine and the sturdy, unshakable boundary of the masculine. You become an energetic, closed circuit, a whole, self-sustaining entity that no longer operates from a paradigm of lack. You realize that the romantic notion of finding your other half was an egoic illusion. You are a complete, sovereign universe, and your twin is another complete universe. Two whole notes creating a beautiful harmony, rather than two broken fractions trying to form an integer. In the ascension toward this inner union, you will invariably encounter the most formidable threshold of the journey: total surrender. Many seekers conflate surrender with giving up, apathy, or forced forgetfulness. True spiritual surrender is none of these. Surrender on the twin flame path is the total abdication of the ego's desire to control the outcome, format, or timeline of the relationship. It is the serene state of consciousness where you can look across the ether and say, I love you unconditionally. I honor this eternal connection, but I no longer require you to be physically present, to act a certain way, or to fulfill a specific role for me to be happy, peaceful, and complete. I trust the timing and the orchestration of the divine implicitly.